Good to be with you today as we celebrate the Immaculate Conception, the Blessed Virgin Mary. And when it comes to Catholic solemnities and celebrations, this is probably the most poorly known one, the one that is the least well understood. And many people that I talk with are really confused as to what this celebration is about. And so it's important to understand that the Immaculate Conception is the Church honoring the belief that the Blessed Virgin Mary was conceived in her mother's womb free from original sin by virtue of the foreseen merits of her Son, Jesus Christ. So this is not about the conception of Jesus that happens and is often thought to have happened around the time of the visitation of the angel Gabriel to Mary at the Annunciation of the birth of Jesus, but this is about the conception of Mary herself. We'll start with our reading from Genesis and kind of continue in this teaching. So in our reading, we go all the way back to Genesis chapter 3, and why does the church take us back there? Well, this is a story of original sin. This is the story of the reason that we end up having Jesus, right? That we get Jesus through God's incredible gift of his grace and mercy, and Our Lady is part of that story, so intimately connected with that story. And so one of the things we see is that in this reading, it starts right after Adam and Eve break faith with God, and they lose that trust, that connection. The church teaches that our first parents, that humanity essentially is created in natural grace. So humanity has a relationship with God. And then out of disobedience, out of pride, that our first parents break that relationship, they lose the state of grace. And immediately the finger pointing starts. Adam is like, as the wife said, I should try that apple, that it was just the best thing at Rouse's, it was on sale, whatever. And, and then Eve is like talking snake, and then the snake is, so it's just like everybody's pointing fingers at each other. And in this account, right, we see that God condemns Satan, expressed in this image of the snake, but he also, there is an implication that the head of the snake will be crushed one day, that the woman, Eve, will have a son that will be the defeat of Satan. And so we know this is true because that Eve is the mother of all the living, as it says, and that that Jesus Christ is sent, and he's believed to be the son of Mary and Joseph, and to everyone it appears to be the natural son. And so we see that Jesus is implied in this account, that he would be sent as Messiah, but that Mary, of course, is part of that in a very deep and profound way. Mary as the new Eve, as the better Eve in a certain sense. And so the Immaculate Conception, again, it's about Our Lady. She's conceived in the womb of St. Anne. And it's the way this feast began, it goes all the way back to the 7th century A.D., and it was known as the Conception of Mary by St. Anne. Pope Clement XI, in his bull Commissio Nobis, established this solemnity for the entire church in 1708. And it's worth noting, too, that under this title of Immaculate Conception, Mary is patroness of the United States. So we, as Americans, have a special connection with Our Lady under this title and under this mystery. And so people often wrestle with this, including a lot of Catholics. Why is Mary conceived without sin? Why is Mary better than anybody else? Why does she get that? Why is it fair for her to have that? Well, it shouldn't take a huge amount of reflection to answer this question. It's appropriate that the mother of God's only Son be sinless. You know, they went through so much effort to protect and preserve the ancient symbols of the things that would hold the presence of God. The Ark of the Covenant was protected so highly by ancient Israel, and that was just an image of who the Blessed Virgin Mary is, that she would have the Son of God, God made incarnate in her own womb. It was appropriate. And Mary is no less redeemed by Jesus than anyone else. And so her Immaculate Conception and the graces she receives throughout her life are her redemption by Jesus. You know, she is no less reliant on the grace of Jesus. And it just makes sense that the mother of God's Son, that she would be preserved from sin at the beginning of her life, and as we believe through the rest of her life, she avoids committing any actual sins. It's also essential to note that Mary did not have any less free will than anyone here. Mary is a picture of someone who has free will, but in every situation she chose to submit that will to God and to cooperate with God's grace that he was calling her to do. So she avoids sin throughout her life. It's also something that I'd like to point out in our reading from Ephesians. You know, St. Paul says that blessed be God and God the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. He says that in him, before the foundation of the world, that we have been chosen, destined even for adoption through Jesus Christ. And so that the Catholic Church does have a teaching of predestination, and it's a bit complicated. Actually, it's a lot more complicated than some of the denominations that are spin-offs, right, from Catholic Christianity. But, you know, God gave Our Lady the grace, and he willed for her the grace to be free from sin. And this applied throughout her life, and that she fully fulfills God's will in that regard. And so Mary is no less adopted through God's grace than any of the rest of us. It's worth pointing that out. And so, in our reading from the Gospel today, we hear the story of the Annunciation, right? The story of the Annunciation, and that Mary is hearing about Jesus, that Jesus would be sent to Israel through her. And so, it's important to understand that, you know, as someone who is free from sin, who throughout her entire life cooperates fully with God's grace, that we need to take inspiration from Our Lady, that we need to see her as someone to imitate, someone to reflect on, someone to learn about. And I do find it kind of scary when I see all the kind of diatribes you can easily find on the internet, or just asking different people where they want to denigrate Our Lady. Because usually if you want to get to be friends with someone or good with someone, you don't talk down about their mom, right? That's usually a bad policy. Don't talk their mom down. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church says pretty early in it, it says that honoring the Blessed Virgin Mary is intrinsic to Christian worship. Honor of Mary is intrinsic. It cannot be separated from Christianity. We can't make it all about Jesus and in no way about Mary. We lose Christianity when we cut his mom out of the picture. And so, we realize that probably all of us could stand to have a better relationship with Our Lady, in the sense that we include her in our prayer life more, that we realize how much we need her to help us get to Jesus, and to keep on pursuing that relationship with Jesus Christ that involves the intercession, the maternal role of his mother. And so as we continue this week, I pray that Our Lady will continue to intercede for us and help us to know her Son better.